Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. Bradley's mother narcissed school and passed away 4 months ago. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will be then taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul, New York State at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. And please voice your concerns to keep Bradley here in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. I have a return guest on. I'm so happy to have Joan Kloth-Zanard back on. The last time she was on was season 4, episode 6 and 52. And the last time we talked, we discussed a form of psychological abuse that uses coercive control, alienation behaviors, and domestic violence by proxy. And I welcome you back, Joan. We're going to talk about custodial interference because that's all these people do.
Yes, and custodial interference is actually a felony, federally and in every state. While every state has a different penalty for that, it's still a felony. So recently in Connecticut, there's a judge who actually believes in shared parenting and repudiates that alienation should be allowed. I'm going to read a email I just got from the Shared Parenting Council of Connecticut. Is pleased to announce that at least one judge understands the importance of both parents to the welfare of their children. The judge rejected a motion to reduce time with the father, saying that this could lead to parental alienation.
Mm-hmm.
The judge signaled that his written opinion will reject a motion by the mother to undermine a 2022 judgment called for equal time shared parenting. The April 3rd, 2023 hearing follows years of litigation costing each parent hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
On April 3rd in Stamford Superior Court, the Honorable Thomas Moukawasher heard a motion by the mother and her attorneys to modify post-judgment. The motion asked to modify 50-50 parenting in 3 ways: reducing the father's weekend time, giving the mother all decision-making authority, and unspecified further relief, which likely would include child support. None was granted under the 50-50 judgment, and attorney fees. The judge sharply questioned the mother's attorney, asking how these modifications would improve the father's relationship with the children. Note that this line of questioning is likely related to the friendly parent factor that Connecticut judges are supposed to consider in child custody matters. The willingness and ability of each parent to facilitate and encourage such continuing parent-child relationship between the child and the other parent as is appropriate. The SPC has long advocated for much greater weight on the friendly parent behavior. The judge used the term alienation to describe the possible outcome if the modifications were granted. While the judge's thinking is unknown, likely it followed a logical path. If the father is unfit for 50-50 time, then is he unfit for any time with his children? If the mother succeeded in reducing weekend time and obtained all decision-making authority, then she would obtain the coveted primary or residential parent designation. She would then decide that the father should play little or no role in the children's lives. The court would have to assume that she alone decides on the best interest of the child. For example, she could move with the children far away from the father or make up excuses to infringe on his time. If he objected in court, it would be difficult for a judge to rule other than for the mother, because the court had already determined that she is the primary parent. And this way, the father might gradually become alienated from his children, even though he started with 50-50 custody. DCF was involved and coordinated with 211 Mobile Crisis to implement family functional therapy to help the family. The FFT worker became a family counselor at both homes, seeking parental cooperation on behalf of their children. He successfully improved family dynamics. He testified on April 3rd, providing positive and neutral information to inform the Judge Moukawasher's response to the motion. This is an example where DCF acts quickly and effectively, whereas too often family courts is slow and ineffective. The judge's written decision will be discussed in another newsletter. The report deals only with verbal responses during the hearing. What this means is that we've got a judge who's saying, hey, no, we've got a 50-50 custody. You have absolutely no grounds to warrant the removal of the father and for you, mother, to have all of this power and control over the father. Enough is enough.
Mhm.
One of the things I also like is that they're now doing an in-home service, which I really feel is probably a better venue to do, where we have a therapist who goes to both homes, working with both parents. One parent, he's working to reestablish that parent's respect and authority with the children, and in the other home, they're helping that parent to stop
Yes.
putting a block to the children's relationship. That parent in the other home is a narcissist, and part of the problem is not having appropriate treatment protocols for therapists, because therapists will not go to therapy, because then it means they have to admit they're not perfect, and if they have to admit they're not perfect, then they have to worry about being abandoned and alone, because this is the way they were raised. They were
Mhm.
raised to believe they had to be perfect. Much
Right.
more psychological is involved here, but the point is, if we could start moving these judges to understanding that shared parenting has to be the standard and norm, even if this was an intact family where there was actual physical abuse going on, there would be therapeutic treatment going on. We
Mhm.
wouldn't be throwing everything out. We'd be working to heal the family as a whole.
Right.
So we need to apply intact treatment to divorce treatment. It doesn't change just because you're getting a divorce or separating.
Definitely, and, I like, when you said the personality disorder will not go to therapy because they don't wanna admit anything is wrong. It's all you. You're the one that's the problem. It's not me.
Right. So
That's what I've heard.
if we delve into the narcissistic personality issues, what we will find is that these people actually have extremely low self-esteem and sense of self-worth. They are so damaged in their self-image that they actually um overcompensate. And brings in Dr. Steve Miller's um 4 C's of calm, cool, convincing, and charming. These people actually have to go on hyper mode in the complete opposite direction to counter their low self-esteem. And so this means that their feeling of being out of control and not having the control becomes their obsession to get the control back, because they are so afraid if they don't have control, they will be abandoned, they won't be loved. But this is the way they were raised. How would they know any differently?
Mhm, mhm.
Narcissists are almost 99% of alienators are narcissistic personalities or bipolar, borderline, one of the cluster Bs.
Uh-huh.
And in their family of origin, when they were growing up, this is the only role model they had. So how would they know any differently to behave? They never made it through the stage of sharing. Which is at age 2. They
Mm.
never made it through understanding compassion and empathy. So how could we expect them to understand this? So, and they're not going to go to therapy, but if it's a parenting family plan, maybe we get them involved. Maybe they're willing to deal with it. And it's got to be a very slow process with narcissists, because they can't handle big changes. It's It's too much because they already don't feel good about themselves. And if you slam them with huge changes, they can't make them. We need to
Mhm.
make very slow adjustments, helping them to acquire empathy and compassion to the point that eventually we've grown in enough that it becomes part of their psyche and their makeup, and this changes all of their life for them and their dynamics into a much more healthy person and
Mhm.
personality.
Mhm.
It will also stop the multi-generational process that is growing the narcissistic personalities. We have an extensive growth in personality disorders, and in particular narcissism. It's
Mhm.
because it's multi-generational, and with 2.5 kids per family, this grows the number of narcissists we have, because these are the only role models these kids are getting.
Oh, I agree completely. It's very scary out there talking
But it's
to
not there is a solution, there are answers.
Uh-huh.
We just have these people that claim parental alienation doesn't exist. Look, I don't care what you call it. It's still psychological abuse
Mhm.
using custodial interference, and through the use of coercive control, parental alienating behaviors, and domestic violence by proxy. Now, if you don't understand what domestic violence by proxy is, it's when somebody uses another person or an agency to exact revenge on somebody. So in the case of alienation, what we have is one parent projecting their issues through the children onto the other parent in an attempt to save little them.
Mhm.
They were abused as a child and nobody saved them. So they're still stuck in that trauma mode from when they were very little. I just had somebody say to me, "Oh no, he came from a normal family, but he was a meth addict or whatever his problem was, and his family also assisted in the alienation." Well, you just confirmed what I'm saying.
Right.
He was abused as a child because this is the only behavior patterns he knows.
Mhm.
And they were alienating him or controlling him in some way, or he had been abused as a child somehow, whether physically, sexually, or psychologically.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I haven't, if I come up against somebody whose ex was not abused in some way, even if it was at 16 being raped or by somebody outside of the home, there that 1%, I have to wonder if they're even alienated,
Mhm.
because alienation is about this need for control, and people that need total control, it's because of a trauma that occurred to them, a domestic violence, physical, sexual, psychological trauma that triggered them to need all this control. It
No.
didn't just happen the day they were born.
Mhm.
It was developmental, multi-generational as a child.
Do you think these behaviors could also be inherited? Because I read once that you can inherit your grandfather's personality or your
There's a difference. Narcissism is not necessarily inherited, it is learned. Bipolar, a chemical
Mhm.
imbalance mental health condition, is inheritable. Those
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
two different things. As to these people that continue to claim parental alienation doesn't exist, look, we don't care what you call it.
Mhm.
The one thing that we all agree on is that psychological abuse is not okay. It is a form of domestic violence, and we need to come up with a way to resolve for it so we're not destroying families. And we need some kind of protocol in place that properly recognizes the signs and symptoms
Mhm.
and can separate them from true abuse.
So when this judge did his ruling, he obviously must have been sharp enough to understand what was going on. Now, it's just a matter of common sense to see what's going on. I I know there's a lot of money involved with the Title IV incentives. Um,
Well, Title IV actually only applies to foster and adoptive, the Title IV,
but
federal.
the but what these parents are doing to each other is they're trying to get the kid to make the other parent a non-custodial parent, so they have to pay child support through
Right, but
Title
that's nothing
4B.
to do with Title IV from the federal government. That has to do with our child support laws, because it used to be in many states, and states are changing this because of the aggressive withholding of the kids. They're changing. It used to be the parent who had the kids the majority of the time got the child support, and it was based on the amount of time the parents were spending with the child, which is not a fair process, because if one parent is withholding the kids deliberately so they can get more child support, that doesn't work. So a lot of the states have changed this. And as well, it should be, because it should not be based on which parent has the kids more, because there may be other extenuating factors here. It should be shared parenting should be a 50-50 all the 50-50 acceptance. It should be the standard, 50-50 standard in all divorces and separations. When we start splitting this to be 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, the kids know. And now that parent that's delegated with less time is seen as a less viable, valuable parent. And that's not true. Look, I'm not telling you that parents that beat the shit out of their kids are okay. No, they are not. And that is why therapy is necessary for them and for the entire family, so that behavior pattern doesn't get passed down to the children. This is why it's a family dynamic. But you cannot use traditional family therapy if it's an alienation case. It doesn't work. Much like substance abuse counseling and in-home therapy, they don't use traditional family therapy, because many substance abusers are there because of family of origin issues, or because of high conflict divorces that have pummeled them and they just can't pull themselves out of it. And the therapy they use is basically the same type of therapy that we are using for parental alienation. So in order to remove the reunification therapy and claim that it's a camp, then you're claiming the reunification therapy for religious cults is a camp. You're claiming that the reunification for substance abusing is a camp. It's not camps. It's scientifically proven, researched programs. What's not researched is these alienators or these people that are claiming parental alienation doesn't exist and that reunification camps doesn't. Their programs aren't studied. In fact, studies of their programs have shown that the children fail and end up psychologically harmed, suicidal, in rehabs, because half of them has been taken from them. One parent has been taken. Look, a parent I'm not telling you again that parents that physically and sexually abuse their children are okay. They're not. That's not okay behavior. But I will also tell you that that parent probably also has a parental skill that is important. Maybe they're really good in math. Maybe they're really good architects. Maybe they're a really good artist. So there are things that the children can obtain that are positive from that parent. And that's where the building needs to begin, the positive aspects, so that that parent can learn that they don't have to be aggressive and mean or abusive in order to have a good feeling not only about themselves, but about their life and their relationships. Relationships have become very complex.
Oh, yes. What about these grandparents that also contribute as flying monkeys?
Because that's how they were raised. This is why we call it multi-generational. It is being passed down from generation to generation.
So then maybe instead of calling it a reunification camp, why not intense family therapy?
Well, that's what it is. That's what it is called, is intensive reunification reunification therapy. These people want to claim it's a camp and that we're brainwashing and programming the children. No, we're debunking and deprogramming the false narratives and misinformation that has been provided to the children by the other parent. Most reunification therapists who are properly trained do a deep dive into everything. They clear the plate. If there is any abuse by the targeted parent, they're going to address that, because they're not going to do intensive reunification until that's addressed. And that's where the people that oppose this don't get it. There's been a serious intensive research of the family to know what they're dealing with. Unlike these people that oppose these places, they've never been to it. They don't understand what the camp is. It's not about bad-mouthing the other parent. We're not brainwashing the kids to hate the other parent. We're helping to reunite them in a healthy relationship, fix the barriers, fix the issues that are going on, help the children to recognize the love and respect and authority of that other parent that's been taken away with misinformation and lies. If there's true abuse going on, obviously that's going to get dealt with first. And this is where these people don't get it. They don't want anything done. They want the kids in traditional family therapy, but every kid that's put into traditional family therapy who is alienated does not survive it. They come out worse. In fact, these people that are opposing it can't even produce valid research and studies of the benefits of traditional family therapy in alienation cases, because there is none. If there is a positive move, it's not, then it wasn't parental alienation. It was something else entirely.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. And these psychologists, and a lot of them are not good.
Right.
I think I've said this before. They probably have a PhD in child sexual abuse. Well, they're not trained in child psychological abuse, and they're mishandling cases and muddying the waters.
Correct. And it's scary, because I would suspect that those that oppose parental alienation are probably all alienators. They all have impeded with a parent's relationship with their kids. And that is why they are so adversarial and so hell-bent on calling these things brainwashing camps. No, that's what a religious cult does. That is what an alienator does. An alienator creates a cult of anger, fear, hatred, and rage at the other parent, for no other reason than because they are so afraid of losing control. And it's all based on their very low sense of self-worth and self-esteem that they were raised with, and that they haven't fixed and learned a healthier way of processing.
Because some of these people, these personality disorders, they may wear makeup and look great, or wear a suit and look great, but they can still have poor self-esteem.
Oh, extremely. In fact, that's the biggest problem, is that they project really good, and the alienated parent, the targeted parent, projects poorly because they're angry, they're anxious, they're afraid, and they're agitated, all of which is the side effects from the legal abuse syndrome and narcissistic victim syndrome and living death of not having their children in their lives. There is no closure. It is much like the parents who are waiting for a child that has been stolen or kidnapped or disappeared to come back. There is no closure. They don't know if they're physically alive or dead. Same thing with a alienated parent. The children we know are physically alive, but they're physically and emotionally dead to the targeted parent, and there is no closure. And the lack of closure causes severe PTSD, stress, and anxiety. on top of being targeted and aggressively attacked, whether it's by DCF with false allegations in the courts, constant dragging them through the court for things, constantly blocking their visitation.
Mm-hmm.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that 99% of all alienated parents have some level of PTSD, stress, and anxiety. A parent who tells me they don't have that, I have to wonder if they're actually alienated. Because you cannot not have it, because these are your children.
Mm-hmm.
The only ways you wouldn't have it is if you didn't give a shit about your kids.
Mm-hmm. Like, I've talked to a lot of parents. We all have PTSD. We're anxious all the time. We're waiting for the next shoe to drop. We're afraid
You don't
of
like
the
going to
mailbox.
even, right. You can't even go to the mailbox because you're afraid there's going to be something in there.
Oh,
Sometimes it's even hard to even open your emails.
Yeah, Joan, I had to take a friend with me on the phone to walk me to the mailbox just to get the mail, because, you know, there was something in there from the courthouse or domestic relations that are legally abusing you and extorting money from you.
Yep. And this is why, you know, I've had clients where they actually have had to have a friend just answer all their emails. I've had to do this for clients where I go into their emails and I tell them, okay, this one here, we're going to talk about. The rest of them are, I literally, because they really, it was too triggering.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, because they are constantly being attacked. So they are constantly in fight, flight, freeze mode. They can't get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be fight, flight, but now we've got freeze, because some parents just literally freeze. They can't move.
Right.
It's like they can't even breathe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, alienators don't actually recognize that this is the consequences of their behavior, because they have no empathy and no compassion to understand. This is why that's the most important piece that needs to be healed in an alienator.
Mm-hmm.
When we can heal their empathy and compassion, I believe that all the rest will melt away, because now they will have healed their heart and soul.
Now, what if the family therapist that goes to the houses, what if this personality disorder narcissist just doesn't let them in, saying, no, I don't have a problem?
Then they're going to lose custody, probably. If the person refuses to let the therapist in to do their job, they will lose custody, because the judge will have no choice, because they refuse to co-parent. They refuse to do the course. They refuse to follow the court orders. This is why I love my 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to give that parent 3 chances in 12 weeks to comply. You don't comply, you're going to be subjected to a worse situation. You're going to lose custody, and you're not going to get custody back until you have learned and healed from your own family of origin issues. And I'm not saying the alienated parent or targeted parent doesn't have their own origin of issues. Let's be real. Okay, so this is something I explain a lot of the time. When the targeted parent and the alienated parent met, it was a yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One parent was looking for somebody that was easy to control, and one parent was looking for somebody to take the control. This was a very unconscious, subconscious attraction based on their family of origin upbringing. One parent is the peacemaker, go with the flow, whatever you say, honey, hoping that the other parent's going to take all the control. The other one is the parent who says, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to tell you how it goes. This is what it is. And they completely annihilate the relationship that way between the children and the other parent, almost, because they're the controller, they're the boss. Now, that being said, I will tell you that one of the other things that I have found with the alienator is that they're the parent with the weaker bond with the children during the marriage, and that the targeted alienated parent usually is the parent with the stronger bond with the children. That parent was usually the one taking them to the doctors, going to the dentist, going to their games, taking them to whatever had to be done, getting them to and from school. Sometimes the alienator will do some of this, but in the context of keeping control and taking all the control and any responsibility away from the other parent. That happens also. But it's primarily what I find is it's the targeted parent who's had the better bond, and the other parent is terrified of that because they're afraid the kids are going to love that parent more. Because as it is, that parent's already got a low self-esteem because the relationship's fallen apart. They can't control the other parent. In fact, in 99% of my cases, I will say that the day that the targeted parent stood up and took back the control is the day all hell hit the fan. Because that's the day the alienator realized they no longer had control of the other parent. And that terrifies them, because that terrifies them that they're going to be alone, because the way they were raised was to believe that they had to be perfect, because if they're not perfect, then they're not lovable. If they're not lovable, they're going to be abandoned. If they're abandoned, they're going to be alone. And they've seen this happen to them as a child, and it terrified them.
And all this multi-generational, they're creating these personality disorders, as well as sociopaths, psychopaths.
Sadly, yes. Sadly, we have unfortunately, we have some of these alienators are now bordering on socio-psychopathic behavior. When your intent is to physically harm another person, whether directly or indirectly, that's sociopathic behavior. It's psychopathic. It is a clear indicator of a lack of empathy and compassion. You've got parents who are trying to poison the other parent. They have they know what they're doing. They know it's wrong, but they think that they have a right because they're the controlling parent, because it's their life and it's their kids, whatever their issue is. We have a recent case out of Colorado. I don't know much about it, and this is a sad situation, where the courts agreed the mother was alienating, that she was deliberately blocking. The father went to the home probably to get his kids for a weekend. There was a court case coming up the following day, and we don't know what happened. But I suspect that the mother threatened to kill the kids or to take the kids if he got custody, and the father shot and killed her because he was protecting his kids. And while that was not the right response, and he felt helpless. He felt, for all we know, the mother said something like, "I've got control of the courts and you're never going to get custody." And he was so concerned for the children and he felt like he had no choice anymore. And he shot and killed her. And it's sad, but this is where these alienators are pushing parents, that they want to protect their kids, even if it means they're going to go to jail for protecting their kids from this alienating parent who's going to harm the kids. No, it wasn't the right answer. He should have immediately called the cops. He should have immediately called the courts. He should have immediately called the police, whatever. But it was in the heat of the moment.
The thing is, and I've noticed that a parent will tell their lawyer, "Gee, they took my kid out of state and kept him for 2 days of my time. Can we file a motion
For makeup time.
Yeah, and the attorney just doesn't do it.
No, because the attorney is afraid of filing too many motions and making too many ways. Wrong. Do I agree that we shouldn't file motion after motion after motion after motion? Yes. We should file it as one motion for all these contempts. Why? It shows a pattern of behavior. When you file it motion by motion by motion by motion, it takes up too much time in the court. The courts get pissed and they're bogged down. So I understand that theory, but the courts need to be notified that this parent has impeded. My husband's ex used to do this all the time. And we go back into the court would say, bad girl, here's a new court order. Bad girl, here's a new court order. And by the time, and so that by the time we get to the 6th court order, the kids are 16 and 18. And back in the 2000s, they didn't understand that unless they penalized the mother for her bad behavior, that this was causing severe psychological abuse to the children. I think I told you about this last time where my stepson went after me. Okay. I had to go to a memorial service for a very close friend of mine. And I shouldn't say very close, but a good friend. He was a musician, and his son is also a musician. So the family had put together a memorial service to celebrate his life. The son had his band and some good friends up on the stage preparing to play. There was a young man up there with a beard and mustache, and I'm looking at him going, he kind of looks a little familiar. I'm not really sure. And so I asked a couple of people if they recognized, if they knew who he was. I then went up to the widow and asked her if she knew. She turns around to look at him, turns back around to tell me no, but she'll find out, when this kid jumps off the stage, lunges at me, shoves me as hard as he can, full force, to the ground on top of other people in front of the widow at a memorial service.
Oh, no.
Now, this would be the age of a 10-year-old, right? 12-year-old. Well, that's the age when the alienation began, 8 to 10 years old. His mother really started pouring it on. And so what we're seeing is a man whose executive functioning skills are compromised. He doesn't have the ability to critically think and to recognize that this is a memorial service. He could politely have walked up to me and said, is there a problem? And I would have said, oh, no, I just wasn't sure who you were, but you look kind of familiar. He could have handled this 1,000 other ways that he didn't do. They actually told him he could play his set and that he was to leave because his behavior was so inappropriate. Now ask me, how old is he? Or was he?
He was probably 24. No.
33.
Ooh.
Does that tell you the damages that this child has incurred because of the misinformation and lies that his mother told him? This is sad. He may have lost his best friend. I hope not. I hope maybe his friends straightened his ass out. I doubt it. He's of the belief that his father and I tried to take him from his mother and that we kept reporting them to DCF. No, that is not what happened. What happened was the kids had bottle rot from their mother putting them to sleep with a bottle of milk or juice at night. We were concerned because they weren't getting proper dental care. So we picked up an extra dental insurance policy because at the time, Medicare or Medicaid did not really provide a full-fledged system, okay? Then we had an issue with her animal, her dog, and her cats peeing and shitting all over the house. In fact, at one point, my husband, one of the 6 times my husband saw the kids, he went to drop the kids off or pick them up, one or the other. And as he's standing at the door waiting to either say goodbye or pick the dog comes over and takes a poke right on the mother's foot, and she takes it and flicks it into the apartment. Well, at that point, my husband's noticing, whoa, the apartment kind of smells.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about cleanliness here. And he starts to remember what was going on when they were married and how she would sleep all day and the kids would climb the counters just to get cereal, to get food. And he'd come home and she's still in bed. Now, this might have been because she was depressed. Okay, I get it. Or she was sick. But there was a pattern here. And he was not perfect, and he's still not perfect, but there's no such thing as a perfect parent.
Right.
But we had concerns. DCF came back that it was perfectly normal for the kids' teeth to rot out of their mouth.
Oh,
DCH
yeah.
came back that everybody's theory of cleanliness is different. We weren't asking to take the kids. We were asking for some oversight to have the mother get some help to deal with some of these issues.
Mhm.
There was nothing about taking the kids. We believed in shared parenting.
Right.
So the kids were lied to and taught to be angry and fear and hate their father based on a false belief by a false and misleading information from their mother.
Oh,
And
yes.
now you can see by this child, this 32-year-old man's behavior, how damaging this was.
He could have killed you.
Yes. No, well, worse, I'm legally disabled. I'm twice his age. He could have seriously hurt me when he shoved me to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
So, and even if I wasn't disabled, it's inappropriate. This is not how we treat people. This is not how we behave at a memorial service. Now, I will bet you he went back home and his mother said, "Good for you."
Mhm.
Here she is. She's teaching him poor behavior patterns. The daughter, I'm not sure where she would have taken this because she works with children. And I would hope that in all of her psychological training, she would recognize how inappropriate this behavior is.
Oh, geez.
Mhm.
Well,
But that's a prime example.
right, right.
And something that people wouldn't even realize or recognize was interrelated to the alienation and his executive functioning skills being damaged by his
Mhm.
mother. I shouldn't say damage, but there were stages of development that got missed by this kid. One of them was probably at the age of 2, learning to share, or for her at the minimum. One of them was learning empathy and compassion. One of them was learning how to control and and be thoughtful, how to critically think. I'm It's scary.
Oh, yeah. Um, I have another story that kind of segues into that one. In fact, I was at a funeral of one of my parents, and one of my children who's completely alienated came with one of her friends from high school, and I've known him too. And so I went up to hug her, and she gave me this, like, but I hugged her and I said, "None of this is your fault."
Good.
And then I let them go see the grandparent and, I later found out that she brought that young man along as a bodyguard because she was told I was going to hit her. Like,
See?
whoa.
Right. And instead, you proved that parent wrong. And the friend that came along said, "You know what? Your mom's really nice." And
Oh,
now
yeah.
your daughter is sitting there psychologically splitting because she doesn't want to offend the alienating parent, but now she realizes maybe she was lied to this whole time.
Mhm. Well, the thing that bothers me the most is this installation of fear on the targeted parent.
Yup.
That is just, very creepy to me. When I heard that, I thought, "Oh, man, why put him in that position?
Yup.
Why don't if you're so concerned about your child, why don't you call a private detective and hire a bodyguard?"
Right. I mean, this reminds me of a situation with one of my family members, and he had gone to watch his daughter at a tennis tournament. Turns out his daughter's tennis partner was one of my daughter's best friends from down the street. So my family member is sitting there, and his goes to say, I guess he went up to say congratulations or something to his daughter, and his daughter, 16-year-old, goes running off to mommy, while the partner looks at my family member and says, It's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you from your your niece. And thank you. It's like this family member has a somewhat of a relationship back, but there are problems. The kids have serious problems. There's gender identity issues that have surfaced. There's other issues and problems, but the kids still love their mother and they're not going to go against their mother. And we understand that. But the damages, these are kids that are 30 and 33 years old. And that's difficult.
And another thing that is disturbing, I mean, I won't keep you all morning, but is that they're going to go out and meet a nice person from a normal home and then put them through hell.
Yep. Well, and that's because that person was raised in a home where they were taught love and compassion and give and take. But they may have also been in a family where one parent was a little bit more controlling, and they are more like the parent that was the peacemaker, go with the flow, whatever you say, honey parent. And you have to remember, we are attracted to people, and our way we are is the way we were raised. There is something I wanted to remind everybody about. As you know, there's this group of people that are claiming parental alienation doesn't exist. It's only used by abusive men. Well, there are two women, Jean Myers and Joan Mercer, who are heavily promoting this. Joan Myers did a research study that can't even be replicated. Joan Myers, or whichever, the Myers have a book. Mercer have a book that they create that was written. This book is so filled with flaws and inabilities to replicate the information that we've had to sit down and we've had experts literally rip through their work. Their findings and research and study of these women's research and book is now been accepted on ResearchGate. This is a very important piece of information. It's by Jennifer Harmon, Bill Burnett, and Alejandro Amaros. I believe the name of it, let me see if I can find the name for you. I might have saved it in my stuff. I know I have it, and whether I kept it in here. It's in my computer. But if anybody needs the exact name, please reach out to me at info@P as in Peter, A as in Apple, S as in Sam, -intervention.org. And I'll get you that. Along with, we had, I'm going to say something like 8 to 10 one-page documents that are backed by 35 years of science and research and evidence about parental alienation, domestic violence, shared parenting, and so on. I will also get those out to people if they ask for them. Ask for the one-pagers.
Gotcha. Well, I'm so glad you came on, and I won't keep you all day because we could talk all day.
I know.
I'd like to have you back on again.
But please, audience, if you have a topic or something related to this that you would like us to discuss, email Marianne or email me, and Marianne and I'll have a discussion on it.
Definitely. And people can reach me at dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. And it's on my website anyway. If just Google me, I guess. But hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Joan Kloth-Zanard in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you very much, Joan.